Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa. This is hashtag We Decide, the first 100 days of Leni Robredo. Thank you so much for coming to Rappler, Vice President.
Thank you.
So, you have a lead to catch up to in these surveys. How important are the surveys? But, I'm a voter. Convince me to vote for you.
Ako, kailangan kasi yung tao, kinukumbinsin natin sila to look at the track record. To look at the track record and to look at the character. Unang-una yung character, palabas pa lang tayo sa isang pandemic. So anong klase yung leadership qualities ng susunod na presidente na mahalaga sa isang bansa na nanggagaling sa isang pandemic na marami siyang kailangang asikasuhin? Yun yung number one. Napakita ko during the 6 years that I was vice president na mahusay ako sa krisis. Mahusay ako sa mga difficult situations. Mabilis akong mag-isip saka magalaw. May ability to inspire not just the office, pero may ability to inspire the private sector to be involved. And I think that's a very important element and component na kinakailangan natin to rebuild the nation after the pandemic. Hindi kaya ng gobyerno na siya lang yung gagalaw. Kailangan na yung private sector should own the problem, should be part of the solution. And I have proven that in the 6 years that I was vice president. Yun yung una. Pangalawa yung track record, pinakita ko din not just during the time that I was vice president, but when I was in Congress, all the years that I wasn't in politics yet. Pinakita ko that I am one leader who leads from the front. Hindi ako isang leader na nakaupo lang sa opisina at nag-order. I do not ask of anyone what I cannot do myself. And I think that's very important given the times that we're in. Pag pinakita yung mga tinatayuan ko sa lahat na issues, I've been very consistent. Hindi ito put on. I think etong track record na ito is also what inspires people to be part of the solution. Knowing na kabahagi ako ng pagod. I put in as much energy and as much number of hours in the work that we do. We live in very extraordinary times. Not just because of the pandemic, but because of the many different complicated things that we're dealing with. Yung energy crisis, yung inflation, maraming mga yung education crisis, na kinakailangan talaga isang leader na babad sa realities on the ground para the best solutions, I would like to believe, come from people who have undergone and have felt how difficult it is. Yung pinagdaanan ng maraming mga kababayan natin.
Okay. I'm gonna fast forward. Some of the first thing you said is, qualities of leadership. Okay, so now you've won. You're president. What are the first 3 things you will do as president?
Ako number one kasi problema natin ngayong trabaho. Yung trabaho yung pinaka-problema. And during the entire campaign period, yung overarching theme of our campaign really is gobyernong tapat, angat buhay lahat. Pero it encapsulates a lot of many different things. And yung kakulangan sa trabaho, problema sa edukasyon, problema sa kalusugan, ito talaga ang pinakabuod nito para makabalik, hindi lang makabalik tayo sa pinanggalingan natin pre-pandemic, pero malampasan natin yung lahat ng problema ang pinagdadaanan. Yung confidence ng tao sa gobyerno niya . Yung tao gagalaw, yung investors papasok. Pag naniniwala siya na yung gobyerno niya, hindi lang malinis, pero alam yung ginagawa. So ang pinakauna ko talagang gagawin is to convey the message na my administration is serious about the many things that it set itself out to do. Para sa investors, yung level playing field, the assurance na zero tolerance for corruption. Kasi pag inayos natin yung ekonomiya natin, papasok yung trabaho. yung education, even before the pandemic, we have been faced with a crisis of a magnitude na talagang kailangan talagang tanggapin natin na sobrang sad-sad na tayo. So yung sa akin talaga, magde-declare na ako ng education crisis. All hands on deck pagdating sa education. We have been at the bottom rung of almost all the international assessments already.
Including when we opened classes face-to-face, right? We were among the last.
Yung number one, ngayon hindi pa open lahat eh.
Yeah.
So sisiguraduhin na bumukas na lahat. Halimbawa, merong McKinsey na study na parang 5/10 lang yung efficiency ng online classes. Ito siguro yung online classes niya na hindi pa taken into consideration yung dito sa atin na walang access to so many things. So yung education, yung trabaho, edukasyon, tapos yung health, yung really making sure na handa na yung healthcare system natin sa pag nagkaroon ulit ng surge, handa na yung healthcare system natin to weather any crisis that can beset us in the future. Halimbawa, kahit pandemic lang ang pag-usapan, yung vaccination rate natin ngayon is just 58%. 58% pa lang yung naka 2 doses, 16% pa lang yung naka booster shots. We see what's happening now in Hong Kong na sobrang grabe nung tama sa kanila ng latest surge nila. And the reason for that is people have been complacent because of the low numbers. Ang vaccination rate nila ang baba. So we don't have to wait for the next surge to happen again. Sisiguraduhin natin na ma-reach na natin yung targets natin. Yung targets natin, kulang pa tayo ng 13 million people because we're targeting 77 million. It's not even a high enough target if you will base it on the targets of other countries. Pag tinignan natin yung basics, halimbawa yung testing, tracing, and treatment, there's still so much to be desired. Yung making sure na pag nagkaroon tayo ng another surge, yung testing natin, sigurado na tayo. Yung contact tracing natin, 2 years into the pandemic, we don't have a centralized database yet.
Relatively non-existent, yeah.
Yung mga iba't ibang mga LGs, may kanya-kanya silang mga contact tracing app, and there's not even an attempt to centralize everything. So, kailangan gawin siya in the first 100 days. Kasi what we don't want to happen is if another surge happens and it's not an impossibility. Now we will be caught flat-footed again. Tapos halimbawa yung treatment, yung PhilHealth natin, 86 billion ang unpaid as of now. Our hospitals are suffering. Yung numbers natin as to capacity, sobrang baba pa. Halimbawa, yung number of beds to population ratio, yung doctors to population ratio, marami pa tayong kailangang asikasuhin. Yung rollout ng universal healthcare, the law has been signed 2019.
Yeah.
Pero sobrang bagal ng rollout. And that's primary healthcare. So those are the things. Ang magiging target ko na in the first 3 months, in the first 100 days, ma-register na lahat sa universal healthcare. Maraming kailangan asikasuhin just in the first 3 months to make sure na eto yung jump off point ng ating administration. Medyo nasa mabuti tayong spot.
You were reluctant to run, to declare. I mean, do you feel like could you have led better to pull Filipinos together?
Alam mo, hindi ko alam kung ano yung sagot. Hindi ko alam yung sagot kasi, yung starting point ko was of a very different mindset. Even when I ran for Congress, the entire 3 years that I was there, I was so sure that will be my first and only term ever. So alam mo yun, walang preparation for a bigger role. Siguro ang saving grace lang is that naging ugali ko naman na whatever is given to me, However limited the role is, ginagawa ko talaga yung lahat. So, when I became a vice presidential candidate, it was very clear to me that I wasn't even the first choice. Na parang panakip butas. And I was doing it just because I felt that I had a role also to play. In the bigger scheme of things. Tapos when I became vice president, siguro hindi ko inasahan na ganito yung magiging political landscape. Na tingin ko if I was aware of it already, or if I was gunning for the presidency from day one already, there were many things I could have done differently. Pero having said that, tingin ko blessing din na the presidency wasn't in the plan until the filing. Kasi siguro kung plano na siya, baka sobrang na yung motivation ko ng mga ginagawa would be more political already. And I'm not so sure if I would have done things the way I did. Halimbawa, when we did Angat Buhay, just after I became vice president, we went to the farthest and the smallest
Yes.
Communities in the Philippines. Na iniisip ko ngayon, siguro kung pinaplano ko na maging presidente noon, baka hindi na kami pumunta. Baka hindi na kami pumunta kasi pag political na yung consideration, parang pag nag-cost benefit ako na political na yung considerations, hindi na siya worth puntahan. Kasi malayo, mahirap, konti yung botante. Siguro kung nagplano na ako maging vice president, baka nag-concentrate na lang kami ng mga programa dito sa Metro Manila where, di ba, yung the bulk of the voting populace is. So siguro blessing siya. Blessing siya in the sense na we were doing things for the right reasons.
I'm going to come back to that because the balance that you're going to try to keep now. I'm going to lay another scenario. So you've taken your oath. You're president. Hello, Madam President. And you've received word that supporters of a candidate refused to accept it. And it looks like the same thing that happened with EDSA Tres, that they're coming to the palace. What would you do?
Ako kasi, I'm so used to very difficult situations. I don't think there was ever a role that I played, even before I joined politics, that wasn't difficult. So ako, because I've been so used to it, I've been used to handling crisis already. Na I have, ako looking back looking back, it gave me the ability to focus on the more important things. Kasi pag iniisip ko na kasi yung politika, halimbawa pag naging pangulo ako, iniisip ko na yung possibility na mag-EDSA Tres. Baka ang gawin ko na lang ng gawin, nililigawan yung mga politiko and mga people who have influence. And I think that would cost me my being a good president. Pero pag focus lang ako sa trabaho, na hindi ko yun iniisip. Ako in that sense kasi very fatalistic ako. Very fatalistic ako na parati kong iniisip na pag gumagawa ako ng mabuti, parang the universe will conspire to make sure I'm given the kind of strength and the kind of support that I would need.
Public service over politics.
Yes.
But in politics, you have to win. So
Yes.
back to this, like, again, in a scenario like that, I guess, where does the military or law enforcement stand in terms of, how would you command them as commander-in-chief?
Ako kasi, I have great faith in them.
You have a good relationship with them.
I have. It's not a very intimate relationship. Pero it's a relationship based on respect. And I think that's more important than personal relationships. Kasi eto mga sundalo, mga ano to mga professional. Na pumasok ito dito sa pagsusundalo because of their great love for country. And ako ang paniniwala ko talaga na pag binigyan mo sila ng choice between good and evil, parating pipiliin nila yung kabutihan. Kailangan lang nilang makita na sincere ako sa ginagawa ko, na seryoso ako sa trabaho. Kasi over the 6 years, I've been through a lot. I have been at the receiving end of a lot of things. Pero yung military, at least a great majority of them, very healthy yung relationship namin.
2 biggest lessons you've had in the last 6 years. You have gone through a lot,
Yes.
as have we all. You know? What were the 2 biggest lessons that you took out of it?
Ako talaga, yung sa akin, to remain focused.
Despite.
To be able to choose your battles well. Na there are fights, there are battles worth fighting for. And marami ding hindi. And yung sa akin talaga, ang realization ko, yung Pilipino, mabuting tao eh. Yung Pilipino, mabuting tao. Na pag nakikita niya na, you know, we were able to survive because of partnerships with the private sector. And a lot of our partners, talagang sinugal nila. Sinugal nila yung, alam mo yun, you know the political situation.
They took a risk despite the dangers to themselves, right?
And ginawa nila yun not because ako yun, pero alam nila na yung vehicle na ino-offer namin sa kanila would be a way for them to help communities. And I think yun talaga, we should just continue doing that. Ako yung paniniwala ko, pag ang tao nakikita niya na mabuti yung hangarin mo and pinaghuhusayan mo yung trabaho, they are willing to invest.
You are one of the, I think you may be, as a political figure, you're one of the most targeted online. Really horrific stuff. I mean, I came very close, but not quite, because I'm not running for president.
I'm not sure about that.
But we've done the big data.
You continue to have your fair share of the muck.
How did you handle it? And how do you deal with this?
I think the most important thing talaga is hindi siya totoo eh. So you know, hindi ako.
But it switches people.
Even then, you know, talaga ang greatest weapon mo is your own conscience. Ako, I would have to admit that we did a lot of missteps. Kasi the first half of our term, talagang we dealt with all this information. Na ang instruction ko to everyone in the office is don't dignify. Wag pansinin, wag natin pansinin, kasi hindi naman yan totoo. It will just go away. Pero how wrong I was. Diba? Parang we realized too late that dapat pala bago pa lang sinasagot mo na. Not in the manner that they're doing the propaganda thing. Pero there are a lot of many different things that you can do to counter them. That was our biggest mistake. Pero if the question is, was I losing sleep over this? Not at all. Kasi wala talagang totoo eh. Lies repeated many times over, yun yung nagiging totoo. And I think that's a reason why a lot of people bought in dun sa propaganda nila.
In the last 2 years, I've started calling social media a behavior modification system. We were a petri dish. You were a target, as Hillary Clinton was a target.
Yes.
You know, what would you do I mean, what should be done with this technology that now is insidiously manipulating us?
Ako, I've been saying this many times over already. Ang ideal sana self-regulation.
Hindi na kaya yun.
Hindi na kaya kasi we've been asking the social media platforms to self-regulate.
They make
for
too much money.
For so many years already and they're not doing anything about it. So yung sa akin talaga, because they're not doing something about it, ako talagang Congress should already pass laws that would make them accountable. Alam ko na there's a thin line between, freedom of expression. Pero sino ba yung lugi dito? Ang lugi dito, yung taong napapapaniwala nila.
It's not a freedom of speech issue, it's the algorithmic amplification. But these are some of the things that we've focused on to try to get laws in place outside the Philippines, because it just cascades to us. 36 years after People Power ousted Ferdinand Marcos, you are the front runner, according to these statistical surveys, is Ferdinand Marcos Jr. And we have in Rappler actually exposed, starting in 2019, focusing on a three-part series, all the data that shows information operations, the insidious manipulation. How do you deal with the changing history? How do you deal with your front runner?
Ako, I would have to admit that it's been very frustrating. Na alam natin yung katotohanan. And yet, people buy into it. And may pagsisisi din. I also can't help but blame myself why I have not done enough or early enough na harangin siya. Ano talaga, parang I started my term. When I started my term, I was too naive about how powerful social media was. So yun. Yung frustration is actually born out of also blaming myself. And it only heightens parang the frustration that you feel. But in the recent past, we see shift on the ground. It's a massive shift on the ground. It's something that we have not seen for so long. When I filed my certificate of candidacy, pag titingnan mo, I had absolutely no chance of, at least yun yung tingin ko, I had absolutely no chance of having a shot at it. Pero ngayon wala akong pagsisisi, observing how people are taking the cudgels already. How people are doing a pushback. Natatawa nga ako ngayon pag nagrereklamo sila na grabeng lumaban yung mga supporters. Mm-hmm. Kasi ang at the back of my mind, naisip ko, ito yung ginagawa nyo sa akin in the last 6 years. Ito yung ginagawa nyo sa akin in the last 6 years. Tapos kayo concerted. Ito organic Yung pushback is organic.
Weaponization of social media was followed very quickly by the weaponization of the law.
Yes.
Laila de Lima started her 6th year in prison. Rappler has 8 cases. 7, I have 7. We have 22 more filed in the last few months. Not cases, but complaints. And since many of them are in Davao, well, we're preparing for cases. Weaponization of the law. You talked earlier about rule of law. Mm-hmm. How do you fix that when the law was used as a weapon against dissent, against journalists? ABS-CBN is shut down.
Ako kasi, yung pressure will really come from people. Yung nakita ko naman in the last 6 years na I was losing hope already.
Pwedeng mag-lose hope.
I was losing hope already. Kasi I've been at the receiving end of so much. Just ang feeling ko, ako lang, mag-isa. So ako, ang nasa isip ko lang noon, gagawin ko yung trabaho ko to my utmost, pero at the end of 6 years, I'm done. Pero ngayon kasi that people are doing a pushback already. And halimbawa, we never expected local officials to make public their support of us. But little by little, they're coming out in the open. And these are public officials who listen to their constituents. So para sa akin, tao din eh. Tao din talaga yung magpuput ng pressure.
Over the last 6 years, we had a president who emphasized loyalty above all and appointed officials that weren't competent, but yet passed through the entire system, right? They gained power and a lot of the inefficiencies that have happened. You mentioned test, trace, treat. All of these things happened because of partly a lack of competence, a lack of priority. When you're choosing people, what are the primary qualities you look for?
Ako syempre experts in their fields. Pero more than being experts, kailangan nasa kanya yung respeto ng lahat na stakeholders na he will have to deal with. Saka yung pangatlo, kailangan malinis yung pangalan. Kailangan malinis yung pangalan kasi yun yung pag-uumpisahan ng lahat eh. Yun yung pag-uumpisahan ng lahat. Tapos pang-apat siguro, kailangan pareho yung aming mga gustong mangyari. Pero ang ako, my style of leadership is very hands-on. So yung nakita ko kasi, and this was exacerbated by the pandemic, parang all the departments have been doing their own thing. Na parang kulang talaga yung nagkukonduktor. And that's one thing that gagawin ko mismo. Nasisiguraduhin ko that all the agencies are working harmoniously together. There are a lot of programs na kailangan yung convergence eh. Yung pandemic, we could have done a lot better. Pag may IATF, pero the departments are still doing their own thing. I first discovered this when I was in ICAD for 18 days. Now all the important agencies were there, but they were doing their own thing. So yun yung aasikasuhin ko pag upo, na yung administrative na trabaho, tututukan ko.
You talked a little bit about how in the last, as vice president, it was lonely. Right? I mean, we felt it. When you hold the line, it's
Yes,
lonely,
yes.
and sometimes you feel alone. You said you did. Could you have done more?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Kasi halimbawa, in communities where the local officials are cooperative, mas marami kami nagagawa eh. Mas marami kami nagagawa because pag okay yung local officials, we are able to converge all the different departments who could help. Halimbawa, we're doing a farmers program in Camarines Sur. And it's very successful only because the local officials we're dealing with are very cooperative. All the regional offices of the national government agencies are all helping out in one program. We can't say the same for many other areas. Kasi halimbawa, pupunta ako to do a courtesy call sa local official kasi ang ideal na pag-roll out ng program through the local government unit. And sanay na ako na hindi ako haharapin. Sanay na ako na when I'm there, conveniently, biglang nasa business trip yung mayor o nagkasakit yung mayor. So, ano yun? That was the norm in the 6 years that I was vice president. Pero we were able to make do with what was given to us. Lalo na kung mas cooperative. Maraming missed opportunities na kung mas cooperative lang sana, kung hindi lang sana kami nire-regard na kalaban, we could have done more.
But Leni, I'm asking this one in terms of frontal confrontation. Like I actually always wind up saying silence is complicity, but syempre that's because also we were under attack, right? Do you think, I mean, like you said, you wish that people came together sooner? Did they just need you to do that sooner? Or is confrontation really the wrong thing? I mean, it's so fascinating listening to you and, public service, it's you have a feminine, and that's a good thing, I think, an empathetic leadership style. But were you silent? You weren't really silent. How do you look at that? Like in terms of the courage, did we say enough about what was
I
wrong?
don't, I'm not sure if you will regard it as silence. Pero I've been very vocal of things that I did not agree with. Pero when we look at the numbers, every time I criticize a program of this administration,
Like the drug war.
like the drug war, eh, I'm not afraid of the trolling eh. Pero my numbers would dip. And every time my numbers would dip, nawawalan kami ng strength as an office. Nawawalan kami ng strength as an office to continue doing what we're doing. Kasi halimbawa, we're doing Angat Buhay program and we're not just depending on our own funds, but a lot of our programs happen because the private sector trust us. And when we don't have that level of stature, when we don't have that stature as an office, sino pa yung tutulong sa amin? So it's a difficult balancing act. Ano yun eh, maraming supporters sometimes become frustrated. Pero hindi kasi nila nakikita na as Vice President, ang una kong kailangan gawin na magawa namin yung trabaho namin.
Productivity.
Hindi ma-strengthen yung partido o ma-strengthen yung political capital. Pero ang una kong mandato is to perform my task as Vice President. So, ano siya? It's parang maraming push and pull na at the end of the day, you ask yourself, bakit ako nandito? Ano ba yung naatasan sa akin na gagawin ko?
And you choose. And of course, thank you for standing up when press freedom is attacked. But I guess now, what do you need to do to win?
As I've said earlier, we're seeing a massive shift on the ground. People are coming out. Pero we need to convert this into votes. And by converting this into votes, dapat yung mga tao na may access to more information and are basing their decisions on that, dapat siguruduhin nila na yung ibang walang access to the same information that they have, they would be able to reach out to them. Lagi kong sinasabi yung radikal na pagmamahal. And I understand the frustration of many of our supporters. Pero we can't allow it to be relegated to name calling or, alam mo yon, to let their frustration get the better of themselves. Kasi there's a fight to win eh.
With your values intact? What's important? Yeah, what's important to you now as because like you've said that you're finding the balance, you're staying true to your values, but it's a really tough, dirty world.
Ako siguro I've gotten past that. Meaning to say, klaro kasi sa akin what I am willing to do and what I am not willing to do.
You've drawn your lines already.
I think I've drawn it during the early days of my being Vice President. There have been a lot of opportunities for me to be more politically strong by entering into, by doing transactional politics, but I've refused that. And now it's not that difficult anymore. Halimbawa ngayon, kailangan ko manalo. Pero klaro na sa mga kasama ko kung ano yung hindi ako willing to do. So it's not like it's still a struggle for me. So sa akin parating parang I don't have to explain myself to the campaign team anymore. They know me very well already. They don't agree with me most of the time in many of the political decisions, but nasanay na sila na I'm so hard-headed about it. Sobrang stubborn ko when it comes to things I'm very passionate about.
So much better is what...
It's so much better.
Yeah.
Kahit admin candidates kami noong 2016, we didn't have this kind of, parati kaming inaakusahan na hakot crowds, nagbabayad ng entertainers, but they are not true at all. And I'm not even bothered by the accusations kasi bahala kayo mag-isip. Pero talagang yung problema nga namin sometimes is how to control. Kasi meron kaming mga events na we want a more intimate setting so that it would be more of a listening
Yes.
listening exercise, but you can't do that anymore because our supporters are really very passionate. Pero we make do, and I think, sabi ko nga, sobrang laking blessing na to any candidate to have supporters this involved and disengaged.
I have to throw a World War III scenario.
Yes.
I mean, you have Putin now. The West, the world seems to have come together.
Yes.
140 countries voting to sanction, voting against Russia.
And NATO stronger than ever.
NATO stronger than ever. The West finally found itself, and yet you have autocrats Inc. kind of
Yes.
also coming together. Russia, China, Iran, the same countries
Yes, yes,
doing
yes.
information operations and information warfare. How will you deal with this much more complex world where democracy isn't assured, right?
Kasi from the point of view of the Philippines,
Please.
Ito yung perfect opportunity for us to strengthen our place under the sun. Yung gusto ko sabihin, actually when people were talking about being neutral, sobrang grabe yung frustration ko about it. Kasi this is not who we are. Ang gusto ko sabihin, I know na ang foreign policy natin is really to take on a position of neutrality most of the time. But this is an extraordinary circumstance na we can show the world who we are as Filipinos. So yung sa akin, klaro yung battle lines now. Alam natin kung sino yung aggressor, alam natin na baseless yung attacks. And this is an opportunity for us to show the world na we fight for whom we think is right. Siyempre, very small player tayo. Very small player tayo compared to the others. Pero
But critical for the South China Sea.
yes. Yun nga eh. Yun nga.
Or
Para
West Philippine Sea. Sorry.
mas dapat mas forward-looking tayo. Hindi naman in a selfish way. Hindi gagawin natin ito kasi may in-expect tayong rewards. Pero dapat kasi yung lesson natin, lahat na ginagawa natin, meron siyang mark in the future. Na mas marami yung kakampi sa atin, mas maraming tutulong sa atin pag klaro yung mga posisyon natin. Halimbawa, when we failed to leverage our arbitral win, it was a missed opportunity for us. Not too late, kasi pwede pa naman natin turn things around. Pero parang sayang yung years from 2016 until the present na hindi natin siya na-leverage to get the support of so many other countries waiting for the Philippines to express, to act on the arbitral tribunal. So parang ganun din siya. Totoo na napakalayo natin sa Ukraine saka sa Russia. Although may maraming economic na repercussions as far as the Philippines is concerned. Pero pag tiningnan natin sa geopolitical stance, klaro yung battle lines eh. And yung mundo bilog eh. Yung mundo bilog. And, di ba? Yun nga, para sa akin, opportunity siya na kailangan mas malakas yung boses natin dito, mas mabuti.
Were you surprised that allies now, foes turned allies like Pantaleon Alvarez are coming out and supporting you?
Definitely. I didn't know of it until very recently. Pero the good thing about it is a lot of people are skeptical about it, about the entire arrangement.
Cynical.
Pero I would have to assure everyone that there is no arrangement at all. It was not transactional at all. In fairness to not just the former speaker, but also the governor, wala talagang hiningi ng kahit ano.
So they just decided, Duterte
we-
allies just decided.
I was traveling to Davao del Sur, and yung advance team namin on the ground was asking if we could do a side trip. We didn't have an event there, pero the day before, if I was willing to do a side trip to Davao del Norte, and dahil mag-express ng support the governor. Yun yung una sinabi, the governor. And then I learned later that pati si Speaker Alvarez, I know that I talked to him before for some other things, pero it was not to discuss shifting allegiances. It was just one of the things. You talk to a lot of many different politicians from many different camps over the course of the campaign. Pero when we were told that they would be announcing on the day that they announced, sobrang nagulat. Sobrang nagulat ako. Parang ilang beses ko pa tinanong na, sigurado ba kayo? Sigurado ba kayo? So wala siyang pag-uusap. I mean, wala siyang pag-uusap at all na ganito yung kailangan o hihingi ng pwesto, walang ganon. So, sobrang binavalue ko. Sobrang binavalue ko yung help, knowing that, if you look at the surveys, yung Davao region is where I am faring the worst. Hindi ako doon nagdo-double digits. Talagang single digits lang ako doon. To get the support of local officials of that stature in the region, ang laking tulong niya sa kampanya. And not only that, when they made public their support, they were getting a lot of expressions of support also from many other local officials.
Do you see any more consolidation? Are you going to try to, pull these unity talks together?
Ako kasi I've
Tried.
I've tried. And ako, ang paniniwala ko talaga, ang best bet namin to have a unification ticket was before the filing. Kasi, when you file, when you file your certificates of candidacy already, you have supporters already who invest in you.
Correct.
And ako mismo, hindi ko na-imagine yung sarili ko na iiwanan ko yung supporters ko. So that was a reason why hindi ako pumayag doon sa earlier talks na magkandidato tayo lahat tapos mag-withdraw na lang ng March, April. Kasi I think it's very difficult to do. So I am aware that there are supporters who are still trying to unify. Pero ako mismo actively seeking it out, hindi na. Kasi our days are filled with campaign trips already. So talagang yung mga araw namin, I'm in Metro Manila only 1 or 2 days every week. And yung araw namin, we would start 6 o'clock in the morning on the average. And nakakabalik kami sa hotel room ng midnight. Pagbalik mo sa hotel room, every day you're in a different place, in a different hotel. So you unpack every day. Pag unpack mo, tayo mga babae, mamamalansya pa tayo, di ba? Mamamalansya pa tayo. Minsan, pag gumigising ako, hindi ko alam kung asan ako. So it's like that. Parang there is no time anymore to do a lot of
these political alliances.
Yes.
You're on a path. Under the Duterte administration, he was a leader who was sexist at best and a misogynist at worst. And you were a target,
Yes.
not just online, but by President Duterte. How did you deal with it, and what can be done now to change these? You almost gave permission for everyone to be their worst selves. And it happened.
Ako, many things. Yung una, yung pag misogynistic remarks about me, naiintindihan ko na hindi ako, especially when I was in the cabinet, I understood that I cannot allow it to get in the way of the work that I was doing. But outside of it, I was very vocal of my, my displeasure of how things were turning out. Pero yung sa akin kasi, I guess to a certain extent, his style of leadership caught many of us off guard, in the sense that, we were learning the ropes by the day. Na para sa akin, yung pinaka-concern ko was how I would be able to exercise my mandate in the way na ma-maximize ko whatever little opportunity was there. So, yung lahat na ginagawa ko was really just that. Paano ako makakapagtrabaho ng maayos given the fact that I was at the receiving end of so much bashing, of so much trolling, of how I was treated by, many government officials. Parang, kung iisipin ko pa na you should not be treating me this way, parang waste of time eh. Waste of emotion. So ako, ang pinoproblema ko lang, given na sobrang konti lang yung space na given to me, paano ko magagawa yung trabaho ko?
Impact. So you were just looking at...
Saka talaga, parang I cannot let the 6 years go by na masasayang yung mandato ng opisina namin. In fact, we reinvented our office. Ako, I have no regrets as far as parang pushing whatever button was available for us just so we can do the work that we wanted our office to do. Parang yon, wala kaming sinayang na opportunity. Marami kami nasayang na opportunity politically. Saka siguro defending myself. Hindi ko nadepensahan yung sarili ko ng maayos. Pero looking back, wala na din akong regrets eh. Wala akong regrets na nag-focus ako sa trabaho.
What will your relationship be with the left, given that someone like Nery Colmenares, for example, became a sticking point, and someone like Leo Dita Guzman said he ran because your party didn't really seem to want him.
Alam mo ako I am one person who is open to everyone. Whether left, whether right, bukas ako sa lahat. In fact, all the 6 years that I was vice president, we were forever talking to many different groups, many different sectors. Pero towards the start of the campaign, we were very much aware yung mga sore points na hindi lang ako. Pero it was a coalition ticket. It was a coalition ticket, and it was very important to us na yung mga makakasali a lot of people were disgusted about the combination. Pero marami kasi siyang considerations na hindi siya ideal. Hindi siya ideal, pero pinakamahalaga sa amin na yung makakasali, yung magko-commit to the governance, the kind of governance that we wanted to push. Pero mahalaga sa amin na lahat ng mga members ng senatorial slate, not just senatorial slate, but also Senator Kiko, were in agreement to each and every one who would be included in the ticket. And sinabi ko naman ito sa kanila, merong mga strong reactions about some of them. And ako laging binibigyan ko ng premium yon. Hindi ko i-insist yung gusto ko lang. Kasi ganun naman yung paniniwala natin na pinapakinggan natin yung lahat. Yung hindi, I think there were a lot of many different groups pushing for Nery Colmenares.
And the Makabayan Bloc.
Wala akong problema with Nery personally. I was with him in Congress. Pero may mga strong feelings about including him in the slate. And naalala ko yung pinagpipilian for the 7th spot was him and Attorney Sonny Matula. And, the entire group agreed na si Attorney Sonny Matula yung kukunin. So So maraming mga considerations. Maraming mga considerations na while bukas naman ako, pag isasali kasi sa ticket, kailangan, I was running as an independent. And kailangan ko yung agreement ng mga kasama ko. So there are a lot of things that I can't reveal publicly. Pero you know, we needed to agree on very important things. Ano naman, wala akong problema sa kanila. Even Kaliodi, we are, you know, I only met him during the first debate, CNN debate. We were together, pero we were discussing yung security of tenure, contractualization. So ano naman, you know, siguro hindi kami nagkausap before, pero yung sektor naman na represent niya, mga manggagawa, si Attorney Sunny Matula from the same sector. So hindi naman masasabi na hindi namin kinukonsulta yung sektor nila.
So, Vice President Robredo, we have a question from a student from De La Salle University.
Hi, I'm Lara Hamalesa, currently a junior taking up international studies. Vice President Leni Robredo, what are your plans for transportation modernization? Will you phase out jeepneys?
Ako, over the course of siguro 4 years, the last 4 years of my term as Vice President, I've been talking to many different transport groups and have been asking them of what they feel about the jeepney modernization. And alam mo, surprisingly, hindi sila kontra. Nahihirapan lang sila sa terms. Halimbawa, agree sila na it is time to start talking about modernization. Siguro lalo pa na-heighten yung need ngayong ang taas-taas na ng gasolina. Really the need na mag-shift na tayo to e-jeepneys. Pero ang problema nila, sobrang mahal for them, sobrang bigat ng terms. So ang hinihingi lang naman nila, na yung subsidies, saka yung subsidies lakihan, yung terms ay habaan para makaya nila. And agree ako sa kanila. Kasi pag hindi nila ito gagawin, ang makaka-comply lang, yung dati ng may capacity. Pero yung bahagi ng transport sector na hirap, na dapat nga sila yung mas tinutulungan natin, sila yung hindi makaka-comply. And yun na yung nangyayari ngayon. Pero ang hindi ko maintindihan kung bakit nung height ng pandemic, na wala na nga silang mga biyahe, pinush pa ito ng pinush. Na I think yun yung mali doon, na yung the pandemic would have been the time na habaan nila yung pag-intindi sa kakulangan. Yun yung number 1. Yung number 2, I think also, this is the time to seriously think about service contracting. Kasi ang tagal na nitong, may budget na ito actually. May budget na ito, I think 5.5 billion. Pero pag tiningnan natin, dun sa 5.5 billion that was set aside for service contracting, 1 billion pa lang yung nagagastos. I'm not sure if it was 5 billion or 1.5, but it's somewhere between that amount. So, ngayon na nag-pandemic, di ba dapat sana ngayon yung time na mas naging active kasi yung social distancing, para sana hindi naman nalulugi yung mga drivers ngayon na ang taas ng presyo ng gas. So sana mas may empathy yung pag-roll out ng mga policies. Kasi ang experience ko naman, ang tao basta kabahagi siya ng pagplano at naiintindihan niya kung bakit dapat ito gawin, mas cooperative naman siya. Pero yung frustration ko about it is, sana wag nating payagan na may mga maiiwan na naman. Kasi pag agree naman tayo na dapat may shift na. Pero dapat yung policy natin should make sure na yung pinakamaliit, hindi siya maiiwan.
Fantastic. What you just described is the paper that was written about Jessie Robredo by a Princeton University series,
yes.
right? What you did in Naga.
Yes.
My last question is, you've lit a spark. So it's reminded the nation in many ways, you know, of a time of beliefs that weren't rewarded. I mean, so how do you keep this going?
Ako kasi, unang-una, I don't want to get the credit for it. Ako,
Ah.
tingin ko naging symbol lang ako. Pero parang the time was right. Parang it was a long journey going to this point. Pero I think with the pandemic, with how we were during the pandemic, parang the dots connect eh. So yung filing ko, I think naging symbol lang ako for people to converge. Pero it could have been anyone else. Yun yung tingin ko. Na yung tao handa na siya. Yung tao parang matagal na siyang nagkimkim. Kasi you see the energy eh. Parang it's not the ordinary kind of energy that you see in many of the exercises we did in the past. Pero it's the kind of energy that was like 1986. Yung people are just raring to they're just raring to be part of the change that is happening. So ako I see it that way. Natingin ko kahit yung to keep it going, it's not with me anymore. Tingin ko
Are you being too modest?
No, I'm not. Tingin ko yun nga, dahil naging symbol ako, I think the one thing that we should do is to keep listening to people. To be attuned to how people feel about a lot of things, and to give them the platform to express themselves. I think that's one of the most, yung mas empowering na klase ng engagement. And I think kahit manalo na ako, this is the bigger challenge. I think the bigger challenge is, halimbawa manalo ako, hindi naman niya masasolve yung problem sa atin eh. So kailangan, yung bigger challenge sa aking administration is how to keep people getting involved and how to make them feel that they are part of the solution, how to make them own the problems that beset the nation. Kasi without that, we will again fail. So tingin ko yun yung pinaka-greatest challenge if I win.
Wonderful. Leni, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been watching #WeDecide, the first 100 days of Leni Robredo. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for joining us.